Alright guys, welcome to the first fantasy video for the 2022 season. Really keen for footy to start off as well as fantasy to kick off. It should be really good fun. Finished really well last year. We ended up finishing 5th overall, if you guys didn't know. So we ended up winning a bit of money, which was good, and as well as a cap. So I'm really happy with that, and hopefully we can carry a bit of that form into the 2022 season. But yeah, it is still pretty early. Fantasy's opened, as you guys have probably known. And we put together a team that I think will be pretty good, considering it's this early on in the season. But sort of a mock slash first draft team, so just players that I think will be pretty good going into round one. Don't take into account too much the rookies that we've selected. They're sort of just there to fill in positions at the moment, but more so take into account the premiums and the mid prizes because those are the players that I think will be pretty good options up for selection going into round one. If you guys are keen to join a league, I'll put a code down below. I've created one, so make sure to check that out if you are keen to join the league. But let's get straight into it. As far as defenders go, we've gone with the three premiums that I think will be pretty good. Aaron Hall, Rich, and Lloyd. Aaron Hall had a really good year this year. We saw a bit of a role change playing through halfback. He loved a +6, got most of his points from +6s, and took majority of the kickouts of North Melbourne alongside with Jack Siebel. So as long as he maintains that role, has a good preseason, I don't see him, dropping off from what he did this year. And hopefully he can carry his form this year into next year's first couple of rounds and throughout the season. So we selected him based on that. Daniel Rich, I think, is a bit of a sneaky option. Potentially a top six, probably not. The reason we selected him is just because of his consistency. Alongside with Hall, he has a similar role. Doesn't take as many marks like Aaron Hall, but he does take a lot of the kickouts, so I do like that. And, it's very rarely that Daniel Rich drops below 80, so we've selected him based on consistency, and hopefully he can bring that going into round one. Jake Lloyd, another player who didn't have his best season this year, but with Jordan Dawson departing, hopefully he can improve on his footy and improve his average because his season that he played this year wasn't bad at all by any standards, but it wasn't at his best. So I think he's at his best when he can average above 120, potentially. So he's still got a bit of value in him as a pick, and I really like Jake Lloyd. But yeah, we've selected Hall, Daniel Rich, and Jake Lloyd mainly based on their role, taking kickouts for each club respectively, as well as their consistency. I think they're all going to be consistent picks going into round one and shouldn't let you down. So that's the reason behind selecting those three players. And then Hayden Young and Malera are our other two mid prices. Young, I feel that is a really promising player. We saw him as a youngster. He was really good, loved to get the footy. Playing that halfback role for Fremantle. He's going to take a lot of marks this year, and what he did last year towards the back end was pretty impressive. I think he scored 3 back-to-back 80s, so I really like the looks of Hayden Young as a mid-price option, and we've selected him for that reason, and mainly because he's a bit of value. So he could potentially average 90 plus this season. That'll be pretty good. Malera didn't play throughout last year, so he has been discounted heavily. So we've selected him based on his price tag, and hopefully he can average 80 plus. I'm not too sure what type of role he plays at Adelaide, whether or not he even gets selected, but he is really cheap at the moment, so we've selected him based on his price. And then the rookies are just there to, fill some space. So that's that. Going into the midfield, we've selected both Tuke Miller and Jack Steele, both of which who had amazing seasons last year. I think Jack Steele is probably the better option out of the two, just because of his ability to tackle. But I like both of them, and it's going to be hard choosing one or the other because they both have the stats that outweigh each other. Jack Steele is a great tackler, well as I feel like Tuke Miller, is a better disposal player. So I'm not too sure if it comes down to selecting one of them, but at the moment we managed to fit both of them in our team, so I like both of them as an option. Could be argued that they're a bit too expensive, but going into the early rounds, you need as many points as you can get, and based on what they did this year, if they can carry that into the 2022 season, it'll put us in a really good position in the early rounds. We've then gone with Tom Mitchell, who I think is just a no-brainer. He's a pig. He's been on the Traders podcast a couple of times, and he has a fantasy game about him. So Tom Mitchell is probably a lock in my team as long as he has a good preseason. I really like him, and he has a great role at Hawthorn. And then Caleb Sarong, who is sort of my mid-pricer, I guess you can call it. I think he's going to have a breakout year. I have a lot of faith in Caleb Sarong. With Chera leaving the Fremantle Dockers, there is a bit more opening in the midfield. Hopefully his time on ground can improve and his minutes can go up. But his scoring last year was pretty impressive, especially towards the back end of the season, where I think he scored 110 plus in the last 3 games. So hopefully he can have a breakout season and score well. The other option was Matt Crouch, but I'm just not too sure with him, given that he's coming off an injury. So Sarong's in our team at the moment over Crouch. And then we've got in Jai Caldwell, who I think is another good option. Got injured really early on in the season, but if he does play throughout that Essendon midfield, I think he's a really good value option. Priced at 488k, there is a lot of upside towards his scoring. So we'll have to wait and see with what type of role he plays in Essendon. If it is in the midfield, I think he's a good pick to select. If it is up forward or wherever, I think probably a stay away from. And then Gallagher, Dacos, Ward, Erasmus, and Clark, just the rookies there at the moment. Obviously, not all of them are going to play round 1, but they're just there to hold some positions. Going into our rocks, pretty interesting. We've gone with Grundy and Bruce. I think Gawn is going to be playing a bit more up forward this year, so that might affect his scoring. So that's our reasoning behind going Grundy over Gawn. Bruce, I think, is a really good value option. Hopefully he can have a good preseason, get through everything right. And at 367k, if he can average 70 plus, that's all I'm hoping for the first couple of rounds. So I like Grundy and Bruce. Gawn is still a really good option to bring in. I just have a bit of concern with Luke Jackson playing a bit more time in the ruck, and I'm not too sure whether Gawn will play fully ruck or he'll play more up forward, because it's most likely that he's going to play, probably 50-50 ruck forward split, given how well he played it in the finals. So that's our reason behind choosing Grundy over Gawn, as well as Bruce. And then our forward line, Taranto, Duncan, sort of no-brainers, I think. They're probably must-haves, Taranto especially, given what he did last year. It was pretty impressive, and he should be back into the midfield where he tackles, where he scores the best. So he's a forward, which is absolute gift, and I think he's a great option. And there's definitely a lot of upside towards him. Priced at 904k, you might think he's a bit expensive, but I think there's also a bit of value in him if he does play that midfield role, because he does have the ability to average 110, 115 plus. Duncan, last year was really impressive from Duncan. He got injured a couple times, which sort of let down his scoring. But aside from that, he scored really well. And I think at 841k, there is a bit of value in him as a pick. And then Stephen Cornelia, who is also pretty cheap considering what he can do. We've seen him average 100 plus in the past. And priced at 695k, there is a lot of value there. My only concern with Stephen Cornelia is what type of role he plays. If he does play up forward, it will probably affect his scoring. So we have to hope that he can play in the midfield, although that isn't looking that great with players like Taranto, Kelly, and Hopper. So I'm not too sure where he plays this year. Hopefully it's throughout the midfield, so we can pick him going into round 1, but I'm not too sure. And our final mid-pricer is Will Brodie. Moved to a new club. He's always had promising signs, never really got used by Gold Coast too much, so hopefully Fremantle do use him in his desired position, which is inside mid. And he does score really well when he plays inside mid. I've seen it a couple of times in the past, so we picked him up based on his price, a bit of value there. Who knows, he can add to the likes of Brayshaw, as well as Sarong and stuff like that, so he should be good in the Fremantle midfield. Whether or not he plays round 1, I have no idea, so that's that. And then we've gone with Smith, Holland, Skinner, and Sarong, just as our rookies in the forward line at the moment. But like I said, don't take too much into account the rookies that we selected. They're just sort of there to fill in some positions. But that's how our team's looking like at the moment. I'm pretty happy with my defense, my midfield, and my forward line. Not too sure about my ruckman, whether Grundy and Bruce are the right options starting with. But given it's this early in the season, there will be a lot of changes to this team. It's sort of my first draft, so there'll be a couple more draft videos, and then my final team review, going into round one. So don't take too much into account the players that I've selected, but do listen to the information. If you guys have enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks' time.